Hello everyone, and welcome to my 517 final, which is legal issues in sport. And my presentation will be over gender exclusion and discrimination issues in athletics. And it is by me, Lexi Matthews. So I included the outline of the presentation just to kind of explain what's going to go on. Of course, we have our introduction, the issue at hand, and what will be presented over the whole presentation. I incorporated a little bit of history and background to better understand gender exclusion discrimination in Title IX, and of course the case at hand and the closing remarks. So the issue and purpose for this presentation is gender-based exclusion. Although there's been more laws created by athletics and society, there are still people in countries that still do not accept the forthcoming of gender equality. Exclusion can also take many forms, whether that be discrimination with employment, equal pay, education, stereotyping, sexism, sex biases, etc. So I know we covered discrimination in Title IX, of course, because this is our final, but I thought I would include some definitions just to make sure everyone was aware. Gender discrimination is something that eliminates an opportunity for a certain person due to their gender. In Title IX, it was created to help grant equal opportunity to the underrepresented party, which for this presentation, it will mostly talk about women. So I incorporated a little bit of history because I think it was very important, and it also helps understand my presentation more. So the stereotype for women back then was really more of a submission to their family and husband, to stay at home and raise and take care of the children, cook, clean, and really school was not an option for women because men were the ones that needed the education the most. And women were really seen as property and had no rights, essentially. And also anything that the women had, any belongings, was really belonged to their husband or their family, essentially their dads. So nothing they owned was really their own. According to one of the online sources, the first real efforts to achieve equality for women occurred in the 1800s. During the early part of the century, co-educational studies at the university level were offered for the first time. State laws were passed, which allowed women to retain their property after marriage. Also, the first women's right convention was held. And usually when women were seeking out jobs, they would most likely be caretakers, nurses, and teachers. So a little bit more history from that same source. In 1878, Congress considered a constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote. Although the amendment failed, it was revitalized every year for a period of 40 years. The movement for the women's suffrage was led, among others, by Susan B. Anthony, who was arrested for voting in a presidential election, and by Lucy Stone, who was one of the first American women to retain her maiden name after marriage. In 1920, women were finally given the constitutional right to vote in the 19th Amendment, which provided that the rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States. So all these pictures, the first picture that you see is a picture of Susan B. Anthony herself, which she was a women's rights activist. And below her picture is a picture from the women's rally. You can see them holding up the signs and how they dressed very differently back then. And then the two pictures beside that are posters. One was from the women's suffrage mass meeting, and the other one was just kind of to introduce women into voting. So the case that I decided to cover was Darren versus Gold. Carlos and Dolores Darren attended a high school in Graves Harbor County, Washington in 1973. The girls wanted to play football, which of course was and still is a contact sport, and they met all the physical exams and tests needed to participate in this sport. However, they were denied the ability to play because of their sex. So the parents of the Darren girls decided to sue against the WIAA, which is the Washington Intergalactic Activities Association, and the girls were represented separately and not together in this case. So the ruling basically over this case was the WIAA rule discriminating against girls on account of their sex violates the constitutional article of 31. If not the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, no compelling state interest requires a holding to the contrary. The overriding of the compelling state interest, as adopted by the people of this state in 1972, is that equality of rights and responsibility under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the account of sex. So to close everything up, since then, obviously, there have been major strides towards eliminating gender exclusion, yet stereotypes, unequal pay, gender discrimination are still happening today. However, even with Title IX being in place, there are still instances where schools can be in violation. So a couple years ago in the WKU's athletic department, there was a rumor about the baseball team getting new lights to put in their stadium. When the softball team heard this, things started to erupt a little bit due to the softball team facility needing work done before the baseball team could even consider getting the new lights. And the work that needed to be done for the softball teams is really giving them a bigger facility, better lights, better sound system, and just really a rejuvenation of everything that they have. And although it was just rumors, if WKU would have went through this, they would have been in violation. So the reasoning behind why gender exclusion, discrimination, and Title IX background was covered so heavily in this presentation is because it's important to know where the underrepresented gender started and what has become that now, and how the cases result in new problems or new solutions being made. Although the female gender was talked about most, that does not mean that the male gender does not get discriminated against either. However, it just sheds light on what the underrepresented party still goes through daily. And to end, here are my references. Thank you.